Hello out there and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. Today I am going to be creating homemade baked beans. Now I like to use yellow-eyed beans, and this package is from Webster Farms, which these beans are probably grown less than 10 kilometers or 5 miles from my house. So I'm supporting a local business and local farm, and they make pretty doggone good beans. Way better than what you get out of a can. And yes, you can buy a can of beans and open them up, and there you go. These take a little more work, but these will make 6 servings of beans. And this particular package was, I think it was $2.43 for 1 pound or 454 grams of beans. Now, I put these on to soak last night, and they've been sitting here in this water all night. So you can see they've swollen up some from last night. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to strain these beans. I'm going to put more water on them, cover them with water. I'm going to follow all the instructions on the package, which I should probably read this to you, and then carry on, and I'll come back and forth as my cooking progresses. Soak the beans overnight in plenty of water to cover them, or place them in a large pot with at least 6 cups of water. Boil for 5 minutes covered. Remove from heat and let stand for 1 hour. So if you forget about it at the night and go, oh, in the morning, dang, I wanted to have beans for supper tonight, you can put them on in the morning and follow the or part here. Now, then you drain them and discard the water and rinse them. Place the beans in a large pot, cover with water. After boiling 5 minutes, simmer till the beans are tender, which is about a half an hour. So I'm going to drain these, and I'm going to cover them with water and put them on to simmer for a half an hour. And then I'll come back and I'll show you what they look like after they've been boiling for half an hour. So see what they look like now. And these are Maritime molasses, pork and molasses beans. So I'm going to be adding pork and molasses to my beans. A lot of places use tomato sauce, but that's not the way I grew up eating beans. I grew up eating beans with molasses. So anyway, carry on with the recipe here. The beans. A sure test is to remove a bean from the pot, blow on it, and make sure the skin cracks, and if it does, they're close to being ready. Beans to be nearly as tender as you want them to be when you add the sugars to them, because they won't tenderize anymore after you've added sugar to them. So it's important to boil them until they're almost cooked. Beans that are simmered too long will get mushy, and beans that are not simmered long enough will be hard and crunchy and not pleasant to eat. Now, I will drain them again and rinse them and put them in my slow cooker. Now, I've got a slow cooker. If you have a bean crock, and whatever you put them in should hold at least 2 liters or 8 cups of volume to make sure that they don't bubble over in your stove. You can put them on in your oven at 300 degrees for 4 to 6 hours, or you can cook them in your slow cooker for 4 to 6 hours. So if you don't have a slow cooker, get yourself a bean crock, nice ceramic one, and you can probably pick, well, I've seen them at household auctions where people are clearing off stuff and are, somebody's going to the nursing home and they're downsizing, or you're having your flea market sales or yard sales, or even online you can buy them. Or you can get them at the kitchen supply stores brand new, but those are going to be pretty pricey. If you're going to buy one that expensive, you may as well buy a crock pot, because they're kind of have more functions than a bean crock. So I'm going to go ahead and drain these, and you don't need to watch me do that because you know how to drain something through a strainer, I'm sure. And I'll come back to you after these have been cooking for a half an hour, and I'll show you what they look like after they're ready to have the next step done to them. And 4 to 6 hours, it'll be baked beans for supper. And I'm going to have, remember the French bread I made a couple of, that you watched, if you watched my video a couple of videos ago? I'm going to have a loaf of French bread. I'm going to warm that up, and we'll have nice warm French bread with butter and molasses with our beans and molasses. Now, there's one thing you need to know about beans, if you don't already. Beans are not a complete protein. So when you have beans, it's important to have some meat with them, or to have some bread with them, or both, because that completes the protein. Beans are very, very difficult to digest if you don't have anything with them to complete the protein. So you can have bread or you can have, that's why beans and brown bread are a staple. And beans and hot dogs are a staple. Or, pork and beans. Not that they put a whole lot of pork in the beans, let me tell you. But anyway, my yellow-eyed beans are now on the pot on the stove. And once they've been boiling for 5 minutes, I'm going to simmer them for half an hour until they tenderize. So right now I'm going to mix up the sauce that's going to go in on top of them. And that is going to be, like I said, 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. And that's my measuring teaspoon I'm using here. 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and as I've said before, that should stay like this. It shouldn't break up. It should stay like just popped out of the cup. All right. Now, a teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, which are both in here together. They're going in there together. There we go. And where's my molasses? Oh yes, brown sugar, and my molasses goes in here, which I'm going to clean off here. There we go, and that's done. Now I've got a teaspoon of vinegar to put in here. I'm going to get molasses all over the place. It's pretty sticky stuff to deal with. 1 teaspoon of, since I'm adding a wet ingredient after the dry, I can use the same teaspoon. Oh yes, and I need a cup of warm water to add to this too, which I forgot. I keep forgetting to get the cup of warm water. And yes, and now I haven't added my onion, you'll notice, but that is because when I have this all done, I have the beans in the pot, and I have this mixed in with it. Then I'm going to cut this onion into quarters this way, and then I'm going to just lay those quarters on top. They just stay on top of the beans and just kind of season it as it cooks. So I'm going to run away right now and get myself a cup of warm water. Okay, I'm back again. I'm just going to add in my cup of warm water. So pour that in there. Stir this all up. And then when my beans are ready for it, my sauce will be ready to go with it. So just kind of stir this around and mix it all up. That's the next exciting thing that happens when you're making beans. A very economical meal. I have my 50-cent loaf of bread to go with it, and I'm going to cut up some hot dogs, and I've some pork, some ground pork that I'm going to add to this. Of course, if you're a vegetarian, then just have your bread with it. You get some nice whole wheat bread or brown bread or a nice full grain bread with it. It's a really nice side, and I butter my bread and put molasses on it, which is really yummy too. Hello, here I am back again, and the beans have been simmering away on my stovetop for a half an hour, and they're now all nicely softened. There they are, all nicely ready to go into my bean crock. And you just pick one out here and see. I can't quite blow on it and get it to split, but there's a bunch of them here that have split, so I can tell that these beans are done. Have a good look at that. I've just drained them and I have rinsed them, so they are ready to go into my bean crock, which is right here. I've already put my meat and my hot dogs in here. 3 cut up hot dogs makes quite a few hot dogs when you really chop them up. I like to slice them like that. Exposes more surface area when you're cooking your dogs in your beans. Cut them straight across if you like. There we go. I'm just going to dump that in there and stir these around a bit because I want to get my meat and I've got ground pork on the bottom and hot dogs. I want to kind of put that through my beans here. It fills my bean crock pretty much to the top, which is good because that's not going to expand much. All my beans have done all their expanding. And you don't want to be too, stir real hard because you'll beat your beans into paste, which you want them to stay as individual beans, not as mush. So now, there we go. And I have my molasses and brown sugar and all the things that I stirred in here. And I'm just going to give that a little stir to make sure everything's off the bottom. I'm going to pour that in here on top of my beans in my crock. Now, it says to cover these with water, so I think this looks like I better add a little bit more water to this to just cover up my beans. So I'm just going to put some in this one. Gets out the rest of the molasses and brown sugar that's in the bottom of it too. There, I'm just going to stir that around a little bit. May as well use this as plain water. Adds a little extra flavor to my beans. I'm just going to carefully pour that over. Well, I've kind of covered my beans. There we go. My beans are pretty much covered. Now, this is my slow cooker on high for 4 to 6 hours. So right now it's 2 o'clock, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, I was a bit late getting these beans on, wasn't I? 6 o'clock, these should be ready to eat. And so supper will be a bit late. Oh, and don't forget your onion. Here's my onion. I've taken my onion. All I did to it was cut it in quarters. I'm just going to put my quarters down, like, sorry, the center part sort of coming out of here. That's just a quarter of an onion. I just kind of split it into quarters. I'm just going to put these quarters in here like this, right in the middle of my bean crock. I'm going to push them down a little bit. And those will just flavor my beans. And when I'm done, I usually fish those out. No, we don't eat them. You can if you like, of course. You can stir them into your beans if you like, or have some with your beans, but I don't really like big bunches of onion. So, all right. So, I'll bring you back again in 4 to 6 hours when I'm serving this up on my plates for dinner. And that will be, oh, these beans will have soaked up that molasses, and they'll be nice and dark brown and instead of white. And they'll be dark brown flesh. And they will be yummy and juicy and delicious. Now I'm going to keep an eye on this too for the next 4 to 6 hours. And if it should happen that my beans get a little dry looking, I need to add more water, I'll add another half a cup or so of water to them, 100 mils of water, just enough to keep them topped up. You don't want to make them watery. You want them to make a nice thick juice to go with your, and soak up with your bread. Yum. Anyway, I hope you made some French bread to go with these, or some other homemade bread, or maybe some brown bread to go with them. Always good with beans. Anyway, I'll be back in about 4 or 5 hours and show you how my beans turned out. Oh, and here I am with my finished baked beans. And aren't they lovely looking? A beautiful dark brown color with lovely juices with them, and those onions looking nice and toasty if you like the onions with them. Anyway, I'm just going to serve up some here. That look yummy. There we go. And tomorrow, when that's been cooled off in the refrigerator, that juice will thicken up even more. See, aren't those beautiful looking beans? Well, I hope you liked this episode today, and that you will subscribe and like my video so you can catch more of my videos from Ruby's Classic Cooking. And I hope you'll try this recipe for baked beans and enjoy them very much. So I will say goodbye for now, and I hope you'll be watching next time I post a new video.